Olá, muito boa tarde a todos. Obrigada pela presença. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas é um programa da Escola de Música e Artes Cênicas, Reitoria Digital e Pro-Reitoria de Extensão e Cultura da Universidade Federal de Goiás, Mississippi State University e Universidade del Atlántico, na Colômbia, com o apoio da Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia de Portugal, Centro de Estudos de Sociologia e Estética Musical da Universidade Nova de Lisboa, Centro de Estudos Brasileiros da UFG, Rádio Universitária e Rádio Brasil Central FM. Fazem parte da equipe do programa Além de Mim, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Seba e Amira Rodrigues Nunes. Nossa proposta é levar a todos os interessados assuntos relacionados à importância da arte e seu papel na sociedade. A entrevistadora de hoje é a doutora Rosângela Seba, chefe do Departamento de Piano da Escola de Música da Mississippi State University. The Piano and its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts Digital Department and the Provost of Culture of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidade del Atlántico, na Colômbia, and the Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the New University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Rádio Universitária, and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Seba, and Yamira Rodrigues Nunes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. Thanks so much to all of you for the audience. The interview today will be Dr. Rosângela Seba, head of the Piano Department, Mississippi State University. And we have Astrid Morales. Thank you very much to be with us. It's an honor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome, Astrid, for being here with us. It's an honor to interview you today. So I'm going to just briefly talk about Astrid. She is born from Mexico City, and she's pursuing her Doctor of Music Arts from Arizona State University, and she's currently adjunct assistant at the University of Texas at Arlington. Welcome to the Piano in its Perspective, Astrid. It's been an honor getting to know you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rose, for the invitation to be here. It's wonderful to be talking to your audience, and I really feel honored. So thank you so much, and hi to everyone that are joining us right now.
So if you are watching us, you can interact with us only if you are logged in the channel. And if you are watching us, welcome to the program. So I always start my interviews asking you, how did you start learning the piano?
Okay, so it's a very interesting journey because as you said, I'm from Mexico City, and my parents are not musicians at all. Probably frequently we hear about a lot of people that, there was a piano at the house and we started like that. My parents, they did not have any musical training. They are both journalists. And it's very interesting because my dad really loved salsa and really loved all the folk music from Mexico. But my mom had always an interest in classical music, and she always wanted to play the piano, but that's a dream that she never got to accomplish until probably when she was now in lessons with me during the pandemic. But it's really interesting because I was really fascinated. My mom wanted a very broad education for me, just going for sports, probably do painting. I loved to paint when I was a child. And I remember that she brought me when I was about 2-3 years old, that she brought me to one of the family concerts in Mexico City. And I remember that they were playing the Carnival of the Animals by Saint-Saëns. And the musicians of the orchestra, they had masks of different animals. And one of those masks, it was a cow. And that's the one that I got. I still remember that it was from the woodwind section. I probably was a clarinet or an oboe. I still don't remember all of the details, but I was just fascinated by the whole sound of the orchestra. And at the very beginning, imagine I was 2 or 3 years old, and I would just turn on the TV in Mexico whenever I was not at school, and I will listen to the classical concerts, all the family concerts that they will be just live streaming sometimes on the TV. And I asked my mom that I really wanted to play the violin because I wanted to be the concert master of the orchestra. But of course, like being in Mexico City and like without a lot of knowledge or like where to go for like music education and all of that, my mom told me, well, like there is a very little academy like right around the corner, and they just have guitar, drums, and piano. And like my whole dream was just like totally devastated at that time, right? Because I really wanted to play the violin. And I said, well, you know, from all the three options, I guess I will just start with piano. So then I started with piano. And it was just like, you know, keyboard basically. And like I started just like looking through the books and like trying to get into the next level. And then my mom got me into piano lessons because I was just advancing too much. And I have always been a little bit nerdy in my life, and I always wanted to be just like challenging myself. And after that, I remember that my piano teacher had a conversation with my mom because I always said, like, I want to be a pianist. I want to be a musician after that. And my piano teacher at that time, he had a conversation with my mom saying that we should probably go to the superior music school or the conservatory so that I could get like a more like, you know, solfege, choir, all of the other subjects, so that I could start probably like a more formal training if that's something that I wanted to do. So we went to different schools in Mexico City. And after that, I remember just being like, okay, I really want to be in the superior music school. And my teacher at that time, that she is a Russian teacher, Natasha Tarasova, like she accepted me in there. And that's how the whole journey started. And I didn't want to play violin after. I mean, I always wanted to, but there was never time. And I just stick with the piano.
Yeah, I wanted to learn the cello, and at the time we couldn't find a teacher either. And my mom said, "We have a piano at home. You'll learn the piano," and it worked.
And it worked very well for sure.
Yeah, so we have something in common. So another thing that you said something about your teacher. I know that a lot of pianists always will have somebody that teacher was fundamental in the development of your career or you as a musician. Do you know, or do you have somebody like that in your life?
Absolutely. I have several people, I would say. So, in fact, for example, for piano performance, I would say in like the fact of just like performing itself, of course, my first piano teacher, like she was the one who pushed me all the way through to be the best and always be on the competitions, because I did not like competitions when I was young. And she pushed me all the way through that, like the first prize was the only one that we could get, right? And I really appreciate that discipline from her, because like I think from a very young age, you start learning that. And it was never an issue for me to practice because I wanted to practice. And my mom never forced me to do that. And after that, when I started my undergrad, I started in the National Conservatory with Héctor Rojas, that he's a Mexican pianist who recorded the whole piano works by Manuel Maria Ponce, our Mexican composer. And I would say that Héctor has been probably like my second father. And like he was always the one guiding me throughout, not just with music itself, but also like that passion and love for Mexican music, which I think it's very important. And at the time that I was growing up as a musician and also as a person, like I was just a teenager. And I remember that not a lot of people will come and represent the music of their country, and they will not perform it in the concert halls. So that's something that I started doing with him. And I think his passion for Manuel Maria Ponce, he just like totally shared it with me. And after that, I think like I always look after like what Héctor is doing, because like Héctor has been absolutely like one of my mentors. And like I consider him also a part of my family, because like your piano teacher becomes also a part of your family. So I have several people, but also Arturo Nieto Dorantes, that he's faculty at the University Laval in Canada. And he has always been also like someone that like he guided me from the very beginning. So in terms of piano solo, I would say it's them. In terms of piano pedagogy, when I came to the States and I started my master's, I became involved with all the piano pedagogy world that we did not have in Mexico. And Sam Holland was the one who guided me, that he is the dean now of the Meadows School of the Arts at Southern Methodist University. And he's also one of the founders for the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy. So I think like this, like all these people that I'm mentioning, like for sure they have guided me throughout this whole time.
Yeah. And it's funny how sometimes the tendency of that professor runs to you as well. The passion is passed through. So since we are talking about nationalism and how he influenced you with Ponce, talk more about your passion in, I hear you playing a lot of Latin American composers as well as underrepresented composers, right?
Yes.
Talk more about your research on this. And I know that you are going to have a series of concerts with another pianist, and it's going to be in California. The concert is for four hands or one piano, four hands. Is that correct?
Yes, one piano, four hands. So I have always been like really passionate about like composers, even living composers that, for example, I had the opportunity to record 2 CDs, one by Ladislao Juarez that he passed away about probably like 10 years ago or so. And I had the opportunity that when I was 17 years old, before coming here to the States, I had the opportunity to record that CD with him and just with his piano works. He was from Aguascalientes, so central Mexico, and he really represented all the folk music from central Mexico. And most of his piano pieces will represent that, like that part of like that nationalism, let's say, but in other pieces, like he will be a total like some atonal works, and like, which, you know, like his compositional style developed throughout the years. And with that said, I also had the opportunity to collaborate with Armando Rosas, that he's a guitar player and he works a lot with like several musicians in Mexico, and he composes his own works. And these cumbia, for example, for Seferino Nandayapa, that probably some of our audience members like have heard about him, that he was a very recognized marimba player.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very famous in Mexico, and like his legacy is still like, you know, with the marimba Nandayapa, with all his family like doing it. And Armando Rosas composed like a set of 3 pieces for the suite Bailabile that they were just for the piano. So I had the opportunity to also work with him during the recording. And I think that's something very special, at least like for our culture, like not just having something that is totally like by a musician that it's obviously classically trained, but like someone that also focuses on other rhythms, just like the cumbia. Like, for example, for me, it was really hard. I had to even learn how to dance cumbia very well because I couldn't feel every single beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like those kind of things, I'm really fascinated by that. And in fact, right now, Gabriela Calderon, that she's a wonderful pianist from Costa Rica, she invited me to do a full recital of piano 4 hands. And we will be touring around California next year. So if anybody is there around California, San Francisco, San Jose, please come and join us. We will be there around mid-March. And we will be just performing piano works for 4 hands that are by some of them living composers, women living composers, and some of them already passed away. But like in the program, we have Mel Bonis, Ruth Chantal, Beatrice Lockhart, Eleanor Alberga, that she's from Jamaica. So like we have different composers, even Caroline Schubring from Arizona, that she's a very young musician and a wonderful pianist and composer. So I would absolutely recommend looking into her works. So we are trying to get that underrepresented women that for so many years, like we did not hear about like their works. We want to be women playing women composers. The same thing that I did with Professor Hannah Kerbiston. She's faculty at Arizona State University. She invited me to do this wonderful project that she had for kind of elementary, intermediate level, living women composers for 4 hands. And we had just so much fun at the Music Teachers National Association conference. And I think that it's very important also in that like pedagogical side to see what is happening with our women living composers.
Yeah, I think I was in that presentation at MPA.
Yes, you were right there.
Unbelievable, very nice presentation.
Thanks.
So I am a proponent of the same thing. Underrepresented composers, women composers that are now, this is something that, is coming up because for so long they were overshadowed by their male counterparts.
Totally.
And now I'm proponent of Brazilian music, and that's something that comes from the Latin pianists and musicians in general to pretty much be the voice for the composers of our country. Yes. So I am, and forgive me if I'm putting you on the spot, but we know Chaves, we know Ponce. Who else? Tell us a little bit more. I know there are plenty, but Absolutely. Tell us more about the Mexican music.
Well, we have, for example, like Felipe Villanueva, right? That like he had like some salon music as well. Well, we have like different composers, like even Revueltas, that like we know him for his orchestral works, but he actually has like a couple of piano pieces, and like both of them are pedagogical, and like you can see like that kind of influence from like his orchestral works, of course. We also have Melesio Morales, for example, that like it's more into like that kind of like nationalism, but like a lot of música de salón, right? So then we also have oh my goodness, like I have so many names right now. For example, like we have Mario Lavista, that he passed away recently. And he was more into probably kind of like a different compositional style, not totally nationalism, but more into the contemporary side. We have Leonardo Corral as one of our living composers that I had the opportunity to perform some of his pedagogical piano pieces that I recorded for the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, this past one on the online section, and that it was in Spanish. So I do believe that like having that representation for our composers, our living composers, like Leonardo Corral has wonderful things out there, and I would definitely recommend looking into his works. Alexis Aranda, he's a very young composer, and he has been the guest composer for the Orquesta Sinfónica Nacional several times, and his piano concertos, he has 2 piano concertos that have been played all around.
In how do we get their music, though? Because that's another story that you know about them and you hear people playing, but how do we get their music? Is there any way?
You know, it's really interesting, and thank you so much for talking about this, because I do believe that that's something that we still have to work on, as like not just like with our composers, but like as a community ourselves, as a community of musicians, because basically you just contact the composer and say like, hey, what piano works do you have? Like some of them will have their websites. And for example, Gabriel Ortiz, right? That now Gabriel Ortiz has been played with LA Phil and like all these major orchestras, not just in the States, but also in Europe. And you can see like all her works in her website. But like some of our other composers do not have like an updated website. Some of them have like some works in there, but like not all of them, right? So then the way that I would recommend everyone doing it is just contacting them. Like most of them are on social media, for example, like others have an email address at their website. So just like go ahead and contact them. And like, that's the way that I have found it's the easiest and best way to contact our composers.
Yeah, I worked really close with the Camargo Guarnieri family, and his wife was extremely helpful. Unfortunately, she passed away. Now I'm in contact with one of his daughters, and they are so willing to help by giving the music, you know. And if you tell them, I would like to perform this, sometimes they send you more than what you asked for, you know. So I think all of us right now, we have to not only dedicate our lives to learn the traditional music, because that's how we build our repertoire and technique, but also to dedicate our lives to composers that were not represented. And that could be even a male composer that never had a voice. But also there are so many women that were working. Right now, I just finished, sorry to interrupt
No, tell us more, please.
I just finished a lecture, and it was about the female voices not heard in Brazil. And they were and there were some that worked directly with Villa-Lobos, but he was such a personality that kind of overshadowed, even though I know that was not his intention. And these women dedicated their lives in compositions for pedagogical purpose, for the conservatories. And some of them wrote theory, solfege book in Portuguese, and that we're still sometimes using until now. So I encourage everybody, every musician, to dedicate their lives or part of their lives in making those composers available for the audience. I think we have to expand our repertoire, and it's a world that is expanding also with internet. And sorry to interrupt you, but can we listen to you perform? I would love to hear.
Absolutely.
Let's start with the Ginastera.
Yes.
Alberto Ginastera, Sonata number 1, and that's the first movement, right?
Yes, that is the first.
So this is a sonata in 4 movements, right?
Yes.
So tell us more about the sonata.
Well, so the sonata, like even like right now that we were talking about like women and everything, so it was commissioned by the Women College in Pennsylvania, right? So then like it's very interesting to see this link now, like with our women composers, and probably like we will elaborate a little bit more of that on like what's happening in Mexico with women composers after listening to the Ginastera. But I had a very interesting approach to this Ginastera sonata because at the very beginning, I felt that it was just overwhelming, right? Like you see all 4 movements and you see the folk music from Argentina and you want to represent it the best way you can. And that was one of like my biggest projects during my doctorate, and working with my teacher, Robert Hamilton. Like he had so much patience with me, like working on this work, because we had totally different approaches. And for me, it was more like bringing out the folk music out of it. And for him, it was more like about like that indigenous part that we can also hear in Ginastera, and I never even thought about it. So then like the indigenous rhythms and like making them way more clear than just like making a beautiful phrase out of it, right? So then I really had a fascinating time with him working on this piece. And I think that it's probably one of the most well-known piano works by Ginastera, but here it is a little bit about the...
But it's not an easy work at all.
It is not at all. No, not for sure.
Of all the movements, which one do you think is the hardest?
I think it's the second movement.
Yes.
Okay. The second movement to memorize, to perform, and even to make it absolutely up to tempo, because I remember Ginastera put a marking that is like 178, something like that, that it's absolutely crazy to practice it that way, and even to perform it, even with the nerves going all the way on, like it's really, really hard and virtuosic.
I never heard anybody playing that much. I mean, that fast.
Oh my goodness.
I never did.
No.
But that's my opinion. I'm the type of person that I rather hear the music than the speed.
Yes.
So let's listen. And where is this performed?
So this was at Arizona State University in one of my DMA recitals.
Okay. Well, let's hear Astrid Morales playing now Ginastera Piano Sonata number 1, first movement, right?
Yes, first movement.
Okay. Unfortunately, we will have to cut it, but I mean, I'm sorry, but we have to go back to the interview. And it is such a beautiful work.
It is.
And one thing of the Ginacera that I always try to do, which I think it's one of the modern, I would call, and this is me calling the second movement of nationalism, is to not quote, but kind of bring the idea of the country without quotation from folk and traditional music. Am I correct in saying that?
I would absolutely agree with you. Yes, absolutely. Like that's the other second nationalism for sure.
Yeah. And it was written later, right? Because it's like in the 50s, right?
Am I correct? On the 53, or probably like
52, I think 54, something like that.
Something, yes.
It's one of the works that it is not easy to perform, but it's even harder to make interesting to the audience.
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
I totally agree with you. Like I have found it, like, I mean, I want to perform it more at recitals lately. Like I want to bring it back into my repertoire because I do believe that it's very hard for the audience to actually understand what is going on throughout the whole sonata, right? And like I think the only one that it's pretty effective, just the way that it's written, it's the third movement. Because like you hear like the strings of the guitar, right? Like you go like, oh, I have heard that before, right? But then like making them like getting through into the whole journey of the four movements, like it's very challenging for the performer for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for playing those. Also, I would like to hear one, and I'm gonna let you speak because I don't know this composer.
Okay.
Jordan, am I correct?
Luis Jordan, yes.
Luis Jordan. So can you tell us more about him, the influences, and what we're gonna hear?
Absolutely. So from Luis Jordan, he was a Spanish composer that he moved to Mexico. And most of his life, he was in Mexico. And he's a composer mostly of zarzuelas, that it's kind of like the Spanish opera, let's call it. And from zarzuelas, he kind of like his style, at least for like, I do not know a lot of piano works by him. This one is one of the most famous and like most played. However, there are just like a couple, like one edition so far that even has like some mistakes in it. And it's, you know, like it's really it's interesting to study his music because it's totally música de salón. So then like all these salon music, like you can absolutely hear like from these dances, like there is a full Spanish influence on it. Like this is not folk music at all from Mexico or any sort of nationalism, but he combines like three different dances into making them just one into this whole set.
And how did you get to know him in the music? How did you know about him?
Well, in Mexico, there is a Mexican pianist, Silvia Navarrete, that she's now the director of the National Conservatório of Music. And she was the first one that I heard her play this music. And after that, in the National Conservatory, we have a big, very big library of music that you can just find all sort of things. And I found the music in there and I had it with me for a while. And finally, I was like, playing this recital that it will be Estampas Musicales that you can find it on my YouTube channel that I work with Arizona State University and the Mexican Consulate of El Paso to make this recital happen during the pandemic because there was no audience or anything. And I recorded it from the very beginning to the end just by myself. And it was kind of like building up this program. I thought, well, what could be good to match with Canción y Danza by Federico Monpou. And that was my first piece because I studied with Joaquín Achúcarro at Southern Methodist University. And that was one of the works that Mr. Achúcarro will always tell me, you have to play this piece. This piece is for you. And I never got to work this piece with him, that he's Spanish himself. And I worked with it on during my doctorate. And I remember saying, like, I really want to program this piece, but I feel that there is something missing with this Canción y Danza, like not by the work itself, but like kind of transitioning into another work. And I thought, how about the Danzas Nocturnas by Jordan? We have two very different Spanish composers with total different influences. And that's how it became a part of my program.
Wonderful, wonderful. Monpu is another story too, because I'm always very fascinated. Cantos Mágicos, I've played those, and they are wonderful works. Anyway, we have a lot in common. I could talk to you about.
You could talk about every Latin American composer and even the influences in Spanish music. And yes, we have a lot of things in common for sure.
Let's listen to Jordan, and this is Cantos.
Danzas Nocturnas.
Okay, Danzas Nocturnas. And here is Astrid Morales. Unfortunately, we will have to cut. So recently, I just recorded some music by Chiquinha Gonzaga, which is also the dances.
Yes, of course.
And are they in the same time? Is this like late 1800s?
Late 1800s. Yes, yes, yes. They are about like, I mean, mid to late. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so mid 1800s to mid 1900s, something like that, right?
Yes, yes, around that time. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating because I never like even thought about like that relation and like even the style, right?
The style and the type of melodies, it's like the dança de salon, right? It's very syncopated left hand and the melody on the right hand.
It's very habanero style.
In Brazil, we call machixe, which is a mixer.
There we go. Yes.
Well, Astrid, it's been such a pleasure to know you, but we're going to go back to something more personal.
Okay.
Both of us, right, immigrated to United States, planning or not planning. Tell us a little bit about your transition and what you've been doing here in the United States, which you are extremely busy. I know you worked with an opera in Oregon. Can you talk more about that opera time? How many months were you with them?
I was there for 4 months in total, and I was a part of the educational tour for Portland Opera. I was their collab pianist, and that was just probably like some of the best 4 months of my life. And we were on tour for like those 4 months, and I think like I cannot even think of a better group of people to put together a full opera that was specifically written for the piano and commissioned by Portland Opera. So we were doing the world premiere of it. And the composer of Beatrice, that it's called the opera, is Dave Ragland, that he's a composer, living composer, very young. And he was commissioned, as I said, by Portland Opera to do this work that it was basically based on the life of Beatrice Morrow Kennedy. That Beatrice Morrow Kennedy was born in Texas, but she moved very young to Oregon, and she was one of the civil rights activists. And she was one of the first women who actually did the African American newspaper. And she was always like looking for like more of a community and like bringing people into awareness for civil rights. So that was some fascinating time that I had in Portland, and we were touring all around the Northwest. So like we visited Oregon, we visited several places in Washington as well, and we will go like every single day to a different high school or even middle school, and we will present this whole opera. It will be a mezzo soprano, a tenor, a baritone, soprano, and myself. So it will be all of us with our tour manager as well. And like we will be traveling in one of the vans from Portland Opera, and then we will have another truck with all the costumes and everything for the opera. And I think like that was probably like one of the best experiences I've ever had.
How many acts?
It was just about 4 acts, but it was 40 minutes, 45 minutes long. So it was not a full-length opera because it was just specifically for these, like high schools and middle schools, so that like they will understand exactly like what was going on in Oregon around the 1900s, right? Which if we look back, like it was like just a very crazy time to be there as almost like as an immigrant and also as a part of like like a minority. So then it was just for some of the people, they didn't even know about Beatrice, and we got the opportunity to even visit Beatrice's house in Portland. So we met with we had a Zoom meeting with one of her grandsons, and it was just like getting to know more about her because she did a lot for the Oregon community there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Astrid, so we come to a point where we are now in our lives, and I say this because I think the hardest part in our lives is to maintain.
Yes.
It's not to go up. Go up when you don't have anything, it's easy to go up. But right now you have a career, you are teaching, and maintaining that career as a pianist, as a teacher, as a proponent of the underrepresented composers. and you have to make a niche for yourself. So how do you balance? How do you do all?
That's a process, a continuous process, an everyday thing that I also ask myself, right? Like, so how are we going to balance everything that you have? And like going a little bit back of like why I came to the United States, like I wanted to pursue a master's. And like at that point, the National University in Mexico, they had a program for a master's in piano performance, but it was just not like as, let's say, as thorough as it would be a master's in the United States, right? So me being an only child, I always wanted to go and live anywhere else. And I had the opportunity to work with Joaquin Achúcarro, who at the very beginning, like he takes every single student, like now he retired, but like he would take every student as a part of his family. And like he would just like welcome us into a very diverse and international studio. So then that we will all not feel just like, okay, I came here and now what, right? So during that process of like coming here just like with no other thoughts other than just being a solo pianist, right? And coming here, just doing my master's and probably after that doing something else, but I didn't really have it clear because I was 19 years old at that time when I came to the States. And just coming by myself, leaving my family, like that was a little bit of a shock, yes, because I was also living by myself for the first time. And imagine that I did not even know how to boil water, right? So like for all of our audience, like they can know, yes, I did not know when I was 20 years old how to boil water. And my mom gave me a whole masterclass on Skype at that time that, like at least I learned after the years, right? But it's really interesting because when I came, I never had the approach of like even teaching. I have never taught other than like just master classes in Mexico. And it's so different than actually like having an actual career as a pedagogue, right? Mm-hmm. And when I started my master's, that's when all these like pedagogy classes started being like kind of like, okay, like this is a total new world for me, right? And what's better than like being in the United States where like they are all about like piano pedagogy too, as something that like we all like research on an everyday basis. And I started teaching, like I got offered the opportunity because they told me Kathy Leisinger, that she's in charge of the piano preparatory department and the piano pedagogy course in SMU, like she was like, I think you could be a good teacher. Try it. Like, don't just stay as a staff pianist right now. Like, try to be a teacher. And since then, I cannot imagine my life without like teaching or performing. Like, I do believe that both of them give me a good balance, because when I don't have one or the other, like, I just feel that like there is something lacking, there is something missing. And now, like, obviously, like I did all my classes for my doctorate. Like, I'm an ABD now. I'm working on my dissertation. And I see like the whole point of why I wanted to do a doctorate, because I wanted to be in academia. I wanted to be in a university. And finally, I'm starting this year, I joined the faculty at the University of Texas in Arlington, and I am in charge of piano pedagogy. I'm in charge of piano performance as well. And I see like all of this combination, obviously, like it's hard to maintain, as you said, like, because now we're just like talking about maintaining even our own standards, right, for playing. Mm-hmm. But I have found myself being way more organized than ever. That I know that in the mornings, for example, before I start teaching, that's the first thing that I need to do. I go ahead and practice, even if it's just for a couple of hours, right? After that, I get ready to go to work. I teach piano literature. I teach group piano. I teach, I also play for a bunch of students in there and some faculty that all of the collab recitals. So I have like certain minutes to get into my schedule. I have 2 chamber music groups that I play for as well. So then it's just, like getting on every single minute that you have of your life. And on top of that, having your personal life, which is important too, right? To maintain a good balance. And at night, I usually go out, I have dinner with my boyfriend, and that's it pretty much for every single day. So just kind of finding a little bit of time everywhere to fit all the activities, having a schedule on a regular basis. And I feel that that's the best way I have found, even to do like research that it's not a part of my doctorate project, but doing research that I like doing and that it's mostly in like pedagogical works.
Yeah, life is quite fast here, and you have to be fast. and you have to get things done. So I really appreciate you saying all of this, because that's the thing about the title of this program, is the piano in its perspective. Because we don't only sit down and play. Totally. There's so much more behind.
Absolutely. And I think that right now, like being a pianist, it just doesn't mean just like winning all these competitions and like just doing all the recitals. Like being a pianist is not also like having just all the degrees to show on a paper. Like being a pianist is about also like being this citizen and community member that you can also like make others aware about topics that they are probably not as familiar as you, right? Like I also serve as the 4th Vice President for the Arizona State Music Teachers Association, and I'm in charge of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And I absolutely love doing that because like there are so many people that like they just need a little bit of an approach to other composers, because we have heard a lot about our Western composers, right? And like we all grew up with it, and there is nothing wrong with it, right? But we want to be also like these kind of pianists that like we're not just doing research, we're not just like on pedagogy, we're doing everything at the same time. And I do believe that like nowadays, that's what being a pianist means for all of us.
Yeah. And there's so much more. You know, I never was taught how to raise money for certain things, or how to improve the community through music. And there's so much different perspective that we can use by using music as a venue. So give an advice to a young musician, in general, not just pianist, a young musician. Look back, and what would you say to yourself?
I would say that don't just be sitting on your comfort zone, because that's something that will always, once you're not sitting on your comfort zone, you start doing new things that you cannot even expect yourself doing. And if you have the will or like the thought of doing something different, go ahead and do it. Like there is nothing wrong with trying, and probably it will work, probably it will not work. Also start building a community. Like that's something very important. And we don't think, as you know, as musicians, sometimes we just spend so much time in the practice rooms. We just spend times in our classes, but also build that community with other people that are doing exactly the same thing as you. That's very important, because like you will find advice, you will find new ideas from all these other people, even new projects. So then like, don't be scared of just like reaching out to people, even like having conversations with them. Like that's something very important as a musician. And for young generations that want to start building a career into this, like try your best not to be just the best performer, or not to be just the best researcher. Like try to combine everything, and don't be afraid of anything, because there are so many opportunities for everyone in different countries.
Well, I had the pleasure to see again my dear friend Astrid Morales. Astrid, all the best to you in your career. I see a bright future, and it's already a bright future. I'm so glad that our paths crossed in Puerto Rico.
Yes, I'm very glad. Like you have been just like absolutely like a guidance, a mentor to me. And like in this short time that we met, like there are so many things that we have in common, and you have guided me throughout like some places that I have been just like in my mind. And like I talk to you, and you're just like the best person to give advice to people. So thank you so much for everything that you do for younger generations like mine, that like sometimes we are just like in our heads trying to see like, where is the way now? Like, where can we find something? And like, you have been just like a total mentor for me. So thank you so much for everything you do.
It's a pleasure. I'm here, and I can let me know what I can do for you. And we had a most wonderful hour with Astrid Morales, a wonderful pianist, collaborative pianist as well, wonderful lecturer. And so please check her out and check her performances in YouTube. Thank you so much, Andrea, for the opportunity. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Thank you so much, Astrid Morales and Rosângela Severt's amazing interview. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, for sure.
Tchau.
Tchau.
Muito obrigada pela presença de todos. O Piano e Suas Perspectivas, The Piano and Its Perspectives is a program of the School of Music and Performing Arts, Digital Department and Provost of Culture of the Federal University of Goiás, Universidade del Atlántico na Colombia, and Mississippi State University, with support from the Foundation for Science and Technology of Portugal, Center for Studies in Sociology and Musical Aesthetics of the New University of Lisbon, Center for Brazilian Studies, Radio Universitária, and Radio Brasil Central FM. Besides me, Pablo Lisboa, Rosângela Seba, and Amira Nunes are part of the program's team. Our proposal is to bring to all those interested issues related to the importance of music and its role in society. Thanks so much to all of you for the audience. See you next week. Thank you very much.